In many industries, firms operate under systems that reward speed of response. Sales pipelines are tracked through weekly dashboards and quarterly commission reports. Every opportunity has a timestamp. Every deal has a closing clock. The rule is simple. The firm that moves first often captures the client. Priority handling exists inside these systems. Early submissions enter fast lanes within internal approval workflows. Late submissions move into slower review queues. Speed becomes a visible operational variable. It appears in dashboards. It appears in pipeline summaries. It appears in management meetings. Inside this structure, a concrete decision appears. A sales manager must decide whether to submit a proposal today or next week. Submitting today secures early queue position. Waiting risks entering the slower review backlog. The reward signal is immediate priority handling. The penalty signal is accumulated waiting cost. Every firm observes the same signals. Every firm reads the same dashboards. A single fast submission creates an advantage, but only temporarily. Other firms see the movement. They begin accelerating their own submissions. The system starts shifting. Two firms begin reacting to each other's timing patterns. Firm A submits proposals earlier in the sales cycle. Firm B moves internal approvals forward to match that timing. The coordination problem begins here. Both firms try to move faster simultaneously. Neither firm can coordinate submission timing with the other. Deadlines begin sliding forward. Internal review cycles compress. Another micro-decision appears. A regional sales director must decide whether to wait for full pricing validation or submit a preliminary proposal immediately. Submitting immediately secures queue priority. Waiting risks losing the fast lane slot. Speed wins the decision. The preliminary proposal is submitted early. Other teams notice the shift. More proposals start arriving earlier in the sales process. Sales dashboards reflect rising activity levels. Weekly pipeline reports show increasing submission counts, but operational capacity remains unchanged. Pricing teams still operate on the same staffing levels. Legal review cycles still require the same documentation. Contract verification still follows the same procedures. The measurable distortion begins here. Reported submission volume rises. Processing capacity does not. Backlogs begin forming inside approval queues. Another acceleration follows. Firms begin monitoring competitor submission patterns. Internal reports track average response times across competitors. A new operational behavior appears. Managers begin setting internal targets for proposal turnaround speed. Submission timing becomes a performance signal. Speed becomes visible. Now the first locking moment appears. Management dashboards start ranking teams by response time. Commission discussions reference submission speed. Sales meetings begin reviewing response time metrics. The system locks into metric logic. Teams begin optimizing for the metric itself. Sales staff prepare proposals earlier in the client conversation. Documentation becomes lighter at initial submission. Review teams receive incomplete proposal packets. Processing time increases inside the queue, yet dashboards show faster response times. Reported performance improves. Operational strain increases. Another coordination breakdown emerges. Sales teams accelerate submissions to capture early timestamps. Review teams slow processing due to incomplete information. Two groups optimize different stages of the same pipeline. Friction spreads through the workflow. Queues lengthen. To compensate, firms add monitoring systems. Internal tools track competitor submission timing. Managers compare timestamps across deals. If one firm submits earlier, others adjust immediately. Acceleration continues. Each firm attempts to outrun the queue, but queues expand everywhere simultaneously. Sales pipelines fill earlier in the cycle. Approvals accumulate in larger backlogs. Another measurable distortion appears. Proposal submission numbers increase each quarter. Completed deal capacity grows slowly. Pipeline metrics expand faster than execution capacity. Reports show growing opportunity flow. Operations show growing review delays. Speed becomes mandatory. Stopping acceleration becomes costly. A firm that delays submission enters the slow queue. Clients interpret slower responses as reduced commitment. The timing race intensifies. Even firms that prefer slower preparation must accelerate. Otherwise, they lose early access to deals. Escalation spreads across the industry. Early submission becomes the norm. Review teams operate under constant backlog pressure. Sales teams submit proposals before full information is available. The spiral becomes visible. Faster submissions create longer queues. Longer queues require earlier submissions to stay competitive. Every firm adjusts again. The pattern stabilizes temporarily. Then another competitor accelerates. The system oscillates. Speed advantages appear briefly, then disappear as others adapt. No firm can safely slow down, but no firm holds a lasting speed advantage. As submission speed becomes the central signal, hiring criteria begin shifting quietly. Job descriptions for sales roles start emphasizing rapid proposal turnaround capability. Interview questions begin referencing response time under competitive pressure. Candidates are asked how quickly they can assemble a preliminary proposal. Internal recruiting scorecards reflect the shift. Speed of execution becomes a listed competency. Resumes highlighting rapid deal response receive higher screening priority. Applicants describing slower, fully documented proposal processes receive less attention. The hiring pipeline absorbs the system logic. Teams begin favoring employees comfortable submitting proposals with partial information. Managers describe this ability as operational agility. The pattern spreads across hiring cycles. Soon, internal training materials begin reflecting the same logic. Sales playbooks are revised during quarterly strategy updates. The first page now outlines recommended response time windows. Submission timing charts appear beside pricing templates. A new guideline appears in the playbook. Submit early to secure queue priority. Shorter lines begin appearing in the training slides. Move first if possible. Deal reviews begin referencing timestamps rather than completeness. Managers highlight early submissions during performance meetings. Playbooks begin including timeline diagrams showing ideal submission windows. Those windows gradually shift earlier each quarter. The adaptation becomes codified. New hires learn the timing logic on their first week. Faster submission becomes the default instruction. The reinforcement continues through reporting systems. Pipeline dashboards display submission timestamps next to deal size. Managers sort reports by earliest submission time. Speed becomes visible everywhere. The system now begins expanding. Submission volume increases across the industry. Each firm accelerates earlier entry into the proposal stage. Operational review teams face larger queues every quarter. Oversight capacity does not scale with the same speed. Legal verification teams still operate with fixed staffing levels. Pricing approval workflows still require the same review steps. Contract validation still moves through the same compliance checks. The backlog grows quietly. Another short line appears. Queues start stretching. Reports continue showing higher submission throughput, but internal approval calendars fill with delayed reviews. Operational capacity begins lagging behind reported activity. This is the scaling amplification mechanism. Acceleration multiplies submission events faster than verification systems can process them. The imbalance remains hidden inside dashboards. Submission metrics rise visibly. Processing delays appear deeper in operational logs. The signal seen by leadership remains submission speed. The bottleneck remains review capacity. The cross-actor feedback loop tightens. Sales teams accelerate submission timing to secure early timestamps. Review teams accumulate more incomplete proposals to process. Incomplete submissions require additional verification cycles. Processing time lengthens further. Sales teams respond again by submitting even earlier. The spiral reinforces itself. At first, the pattern appears temporary. Some managers briefly question whether early submissions truly increase deal success rates. The answer remains unclear, but the metric continues moving upward, and the metric remains visible. Another short line appears. Dashboards keep climbing. Time horizon mismatch begins shaping decision cycles. Quarterly performance reviews evaluate submission activity within short reporting windows. Operational capacity issues emerge slowly across longer time horizons. Immediate performance signals dominate internal meetings. Long-term operational strain accumulates outside those reporting windows. The system continues reinforcing the faster behavior. Information asymmetry deepens between departments. Sales dashboards highlight rising proposal activity. Operations logs track increasing backlog days. Both datasets exist inside separate reporting systems. Leadership meetings focus primarily on pipeline velocity charts. Operational delay metrics appear only in internal workflow tools. The two signals rarely appear in the same report. Another short line appears. Signals drift apart. Meanwhile, hiring cycles continue reinforcing speed preferences. New managers select candidates who describe aggressive proposal timelines. Training materials celebrate early submissions that captured large deals. Internal playbooks update once more. Recommended response windows shift even earlier. Escalation becomes normalized. Across the industry, firms begin observing competitor submission timing through market signals. Public deal announcements reveal increasingly compressed proposal cycles. Each firm interprets this as confirmation that acceleration remains necessary. Monitoring intensifies. Internal dashboards begin comparing competitor response speeds when visible. Managers adjust internal expectations again. More proposals are submitted at earlier stages of negotiation. Verification teams face even larger documentation gaps. Operational review times expand quietly, yet submission metrics continue improving quarter after quarter. The distortion widens. Reported activity accelerates. Operational capacity stretches thin. The system stabilizes temporarily around constant acceleration. Speed becomes a baseline expectation. Slowing down becomes risky, but no firm can sustain a permanent advantage. Across the industry, the same pattern continues repeating. Each firm tries to move slightly earlier in the cycle. Submission timestamps keep advancing, but the queue always follows. Operational calendars begin filling weeks ahead of verification capacity. Pricing teams review proposals that arrived before full cost validation. Legal teams process contracts that require multiple correction cycles. The review backlog becomes permanent infrastructure. Another short line appears. Acceleration becomes routine. Inside management meetings, the visible indicator remains response speed. Submission charts still trend upward. Operational strain rarely appears on those slides. Instead, it appears inside internal ticket queues. It appears in approval waiting lists. It appears in contract revision cycles. The two signals move in opposite directions. Reported performance increases. Operational capacity stabilizes slowly. Yet the system does not reverse, because each firm still faces the same micro-decision. Submit now and secure early priority, or wait and risk entering the slower queue. The rational choice repeats. Every week, every quarter, every hiring cycle. The escalation continues without coordination. Firms accelerate to outrun the backlog, but the backlog expands with them. The advantage disappears as soon as everyone accelerates. Yet slowing down remains costly, so the system stabilizes around constant motion. An equilibrium emerges that no single firm designed. Faster submissions, earlier timestamps, permanent review queues. The industry did not change because firms became more aggressive. The industry changed because the incentive for speed existed. Once speed became the reward signal, behavior adjusted. And once behavior adjusted everywhere, the system adjusted.